She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing, searching his face like she was trying to catch a lie before it could hide. "You've been distant lately," she said, her voice soft, but with steel underneath. "You're not yourself." Julian forced a small smile, avoiding her stare. "There's a lot on my mind, Vanessa. The wedding business. You know how it gets," Julian Blake said, trying to sound normal. But Vanessa wasn't buying it. She stepped closer, her voice dropping lower. "If there's something you're not telling me, Julian, I'd rather hear it now. We've worked too hard to get to this moment. For the wedding, the image, everything. I need to know your head's in the right place." Her words were calm, but there was a sharp edge under the surface. A quiet threat. Julian met her gaze. For a second, he saw what was really behind her perfectly polished look: possession, not partnership. He chuckled lightly. "You worry too much." But inside, he was miles away. Vanessa stared at him for a moment, her jaw tightening slightly before she nodded once. "I'll trust you," she murmured. But her voice said otherwise. As she turned and walked away, Julian's fake smile dropped. His chest felt hollow. Her doubt wasn't going to fade easily. And the more she clung to their perfect picture, the more he felt himself slipping away from it. The next day, Julian walked back into the decorated school with purpose. No more avoiding it. He saw Elena Hart across the room, gently straightening table linens. The twins were nearby, playing quietly. He waited. And when she was finally alone, he walked up, slow, steady. "Elena," he said, blocking her path softly. She looked up, surprised. Her face stiffened instantly. "What is it now, Julian?" she asked coolly, trying to move past him. But he didn't budge. "I need to know," he said, his voice low, serious. "Those children, are they mine?" The words hung heavy between them, like a boulder dropped in silence. Elena's eyes darkened. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked over at the twins, making sure they were out of earshot. Then she met his eyes. Her face unreadable. "Why does it matter now?" she asked, voice flat, but something deeper trembled underneath. Julian's pulse raced. "Because I need the truth," he said. "I deserve to know." She shook her head, her walls rising again. "You left our marriage, Julian. You walked away. Why go digging into what's already buried?" He swallowed hard. She wasn't going to make this easy. "I need to hear it from you," he said more gently now, nearly pleading. But Elena just gave a small nod and looked away. Her voice turned cold. "Some truths don't change anything." Then she walked off, not looking back once. Julian stood there, chest tight, throat dry, filled with more questions than ever. That night, he sat at their usual bar. A quiet corner booth. His drink untouched. His thoughts loud. The conversation with Elena kept replaying in his head, the guarded look in her eyes, the way she refused to say yes or no. Marcus Hale slid into the seat across from him, raising an eyebrow. "Judging by your face, this ain't business," he muttered, waving for the bartender. Julian let out a heavy breath and leaned forward. "I asked her." Marcus leaned in, listening. "I asked if the twins are mine," Julian said quietly. She didn't confirm, but she didn't deny it either. Marcus blinked slowly, but kept calm. "So what now?" Julian stared at his drink. "I don't know. But not knowing is killing me." Marcus tapped his glass on the table thoughtfully. "You're walking on a landmine, Julian. This isn't just about her or the kids. If you dig too deep, everything you've built with Vanessa, it could all blow up." Julian looked away, jaw tight. Marcus leaned in a little closer. "I've known you for a long time. You've built a name, a brand. You're days away from marrying a woman who's all about image. If you take this path, you better be ready for the fallout." Julian didn't speak. His fingers tightened around his glass. He didn't have the answer yet. But one thing was clear: the truth wasn't going to stay hidden much longer. The next afternoon, Julian returned to the venue under the pretense of checking on final arrangements. But that wasn't why he was there. Decorators moved quickly around the room, but Julian Blake wasn't focused on any of it. His eyes scanned every corner, until they found Elena Hart and the twins near the back. They were playing quietly, laughing together. The soft sound of their joy filled the space. Julian hesitated. Then slowly, he walked over. He crouched beside the boy. "Hey there," he said gently. Daniel looked up at him, smiling wide, and there it was again, that dimple. Julian's heart caught in his chest. Then the boy tugged on Julian's sleeve like they'd known each other for years. "Mama says I got my elbow mark from Grandpa. And maybe someone else too," Daniel said, lifting his sleeve. Julian's eyes froze. A small crescent-shaped birthmark. Right near the boy's elbow. An exact match for the one Julian had, passed down from his father, and his grandfather before that. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The sound in the room blurred. His throat tightened. That wasn't coincidence. It was blood. It was legacy. Daniel laughed and ran off, completely unaware of the storm he just stirred inside Julian. Julian stood slowly, his heart racing, his chest heavy as he watched the twins skip back to Elena. She looked up. She saw him. And in that one shared glance she knew he had seen the truth. There was no going back now. Later that day, Julian waited outside near the staff exit, pacing, needing to speak to her, alone. When Elena finally walked out, the twins already gone, he stepped into her path. "Elena," he said, firmly but softly. She froze. Her shoulders tightened. Her eyes were cautious. "I saw the birthmark," Julian said quietly, searching her face. "I know they're mine." Elena's calm cracked, just slightly. Her eyes darkened. But she held herself up. "Why now, Julian?" she asked in a whisper, her voice trembling with emotion. "Why dig up what can't be undone?" Julian shook his head, stepping closer. "I need the truth. All of it." Her lips trembled. For a moment, her wall crumbled. "I found out after you left," she said, voice barely audible. I thought you were gone. That you had moved on. I didn't want to pull you back into a mess. Not when everything between us was already broken." Julian felt his chest ache, the weight of her words sitting heavy. "You should have told me," he whispered. The words hurt as they came out. Elena's eyes glistened, but she blinked fast to hide it. "What difference would it have made?" she asked, her voice low. "You had your life. I made mine." She stepped back, trying to compose herself. "I've done fine without you," she said. But the look she gave him as she turned to leave? That look said otherwise. It was a look full of pain. Full of sacrifice. And a wound that had never healed. That night, Julian didn't sleep. Her voice kept echoing in his mind. Her trembling lips. Her guarded eyes. By morning, he was exhausted. But something inside him had shifted. Clarity. He couldn't walk away now. Not anymore. He returned to the venue, waiting for a quiet moment when Elena stepped away from the others. This time, he didn't hesitate. "Elena," he said gently, walking up to her beneath the shade of a tree behind the venue. She turned slowly, her arms crossed, her body bracing like a shield. Julian stood still. "I need to ask something else," he said quietly. "Why did you really leave me?" She let out a slow breath, looking away. The silence between them stretched long. Then she looked at him. Her eyes didn't waver. "I found out about the affair," she said, her voice tight. "With Vanessa." The name hit like a slap. Julian flinched, his mouth dry. "It wasn't what you think," he said weakly. Elena gave a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Does it matter?" she asked. "You picked her. You let me walk away. You didn't even ask why I left." Her voice cracked. "I was pregnant, Julian. Couldn't bear to raise my children in a home filled with betrayal," Elena Hart said softly, her voice breaking. "I had to walk away." Her words hit Julian Blake like a truck. He stood frozen, the truth crashing into him all at once. Everything he thought he knew, everything he told himself to believe, unraveled in that one moment. Later, Julian sat in his car, still parked outside the venue, staring blankly at the steering wheel. Elena's words played on a loop in his mind. He could still hear the pain in her voice, still feel the weight of every sentence. How had he not seen it? How had he let his pride, his lies, and his ego blind him to what really mattered? It wasn't lost on him, the irony. He had built an empire, crafted a flawless public image, planned a wedding the whole city envied. And somehow, He had lost the most important parts of his life without even noticing. He rubbed his face with both hands, trying to breathe, trying to process. Vanessa Cross's calculated control hadn't just cost him Elena. It had stolen years from his children's lives. Days passed in a blur. Julian stopped answering his phone. Cancelled every meeting. Ignored Vanessa's endless calls and texts. He couldn't face any of it. Not the wedding. Not the business. Not the picture-perfect world he had carefully manufactured. Instead, he drove around for hours each day, lost in old memories, thinking about everything Elena must have gone through on her own. He imagined the long nights she stayed up with the twins. The birthdays he missed. The scraped knees he didn't bandage. The milestones he never witnessed. It haunted him. Guilt, anger, regret, all mixed together into a pain that wouldn't let up. For the first time in years, Julian questioned everything. Not just the wedding, but the man he had become. It didn't take Vanessa long to notice his absence. She showed up at his penthouse uninvited, tension rolling off her like a storm. "What is going on with you, Julian?" she asked sharply, skipping the niceties. "You've been ghosting me. No meetings. No calls. You've missed everything." Julian looked at her, his face pale and tired. His voice was low, steady. "I've had things to think about." He didn't offer more. Vanessa's mask slipped a little. Her voice sharpened. "Is this about Elena?" Julian didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. Vanessa crossed her arms, anger building. "I thought we were done with that chapter," she snapped. Julian studied her closely. There was something behind her cool surface, something too perfectly rehearsed. "Were we?" he asked calmly. "You pulled strings, didn't you? More than I realized." Vanessa's jaw tightened. She didn't deny it. Instead, she offered a tight, icy smile. "I did what I had to do. You wanted a perfect life. I gave it to you. Don't act like you didn't know what it cost." The cruelty in her words wasn't hidden anymore. Julian stared at her, something inside him breaking. "A perfect life built on lies," he murmured. Vanessa stepped back, her expression cold. "We're days away from the wedding. Don't destroy everything now." But it was already too late. Julian had made up his mind. For the first time he saw her clearly, not as a partner, but as the designer of the emptiness he'd been living in. And he wasn't sure he could keep pretending anymore. The next morning, the air felt heavier as Julian returned once again to the venue. The place that had somehow become the center of all his emotional chaos. But today, something was different. The decorators were almost finished. The hall was nearly complete. But Elena was nowhere in sight. Julian looked around, tense, searching. She was gone. That's when Gloria approached him quietly, a soft sadness in her voice. "She asked me to give you this," Gloria said, handing him a folded envelope before walking away. Julian stared at it, heart pounding. Somehow, he already knew it wouldn't be just a goodbye. He opened it slowly. Elena's handwriting was unmistakable. And every sentence hit like a punch to the chest. "Julian, I never wanted to stand in the way of the life you built. I never wanted you to feel obligated or trapped by the past," Elena Hart's letter read. "You've moved on, and so have I. The twins have everything they need. They have me. I only took this job to make ends meet. I didn't expect to see you again. I didn't plan to stay long. Don't let the past ruin what you've built. Live the life you've chosen. I wish you happiness. Elena." Julian Blake read it twice. Then a third time. Each line cut deeper. She was leaving again, quietly, no argument, no scene. Just gone. A letter instead of closure. But what shook him most wasn't her goodbye. It was the part about the twins. She was giving him an out. A clean escape. But the ache in his chest told him, taking it would come at too high a cost. That evening, Julian sat alone on the balcony of his penthouse. The lights of Chicago flickered around him, but he felt nothing. Elena's letter sat on the table beside his untouched drink. But the words kept replaying in his mind like a record he couldn't shut off. Each sentence felt like a door slowly closing, leaving him outside in the cold. He tried to picture it, going through with the wedding, marrying Vanessa Cross, continuing the image he'd spent years perfecting. But the thought weighed on him like stone. His mind spun with every moment he'd shared with Elena in the past few days. Her silence. Her strength. The way she never once asked anything of him, not help, not money, not even recognition. She had carried it all on her own. And those twins. Their innocent smiles, their familiar faces, they stayed with him like ghosts. Vanessa's voice echoed faintly in his head too. So controlled. So firm. So intent on keeping the fantasy alive. But the distance between the life Julian thought he wanted and what he now felt growing inside him was too wide to ignore. He tapped his glass restlessly, tension crawling under his skin. For years, he told himself that success meant control. That his past could be buried under power, money, and status. But now, he was standing at the edge of a decision that could tear it all down. Could he really live with the truth locked away forever? Could he live with knowing he turned his back on his children? His silence was suffocating. The guilt heavier than anything he'd ever carried. And for the first time, Julian feared the consequences of pretending any longer. The next morning, the sky was clear, bright and cloudless. A perfect day for a wedding, everyone said. The grand hall sparkled. The final touches were done. Guests were arriving in luxury cars, dressed in elegance. Photographers waited outside. But inside, Julian stood alone in his suite, staring at the mirror, adjusting his cufflinks like a robot. There was no excitement. No nerves. Only a dull, deep ache in his chest. Marcus Hale knocked gently and stepped in. "Everything's ready downstairs," he said quietly. Julian nodded and tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Marcus studied him. Then spoke again. "You sure about this?" The question hit hard. Julian didn't answer at first. He looked toward the floor. "I've been asking myself the same thing all night," he admitted. Marcus stepped in closer, lowering his voice. "You've always done what people expected of you. But this isn't about them. This is about you. You need to be sure it's what you want." The air between them felt heavy, like something big was about to crack. Julian looked at the door. The one that would lead him to the ceremony. To Vanessa. To the life he had spent years building. But his heart was elsewhere. In a small apartment across the city. With 2 children who looked just like him. And a woman who had walked away from him twice, never asking for anything, only carrying what he couldn't. Downstairs, music started. Guests shifted in their seats. It was time. Julian stood behind the thick double doors of the grand hall. He could hear the soft murmur of voices on the other side. The wedding was about to begin. Vanessa was already at the altar, perfect posture, perfect dress, expecting him to walk through those doors and finish the story they'd written. His hands looked steady. But inside? Everything inside him was spiraling. He thought of Marcus's words. He thought of Elena's letter. He saw Daniel's dimpled smile. Danielle's sweet, innocent smile lingered in Julian Blake's mind. Every instinct in him screamed, "Is this the life you really want? The polished one? That's hollow underneath?" He didn't need more time. Without hesitation, Julian stepped back from the doors. And then, he turned. He walked quickly down the corridor, away from the grand hall, away from the altar, and away from the carefully laid expectations that had trapped him for years. Whispers filled the hallway. Staff stared. Phones buzzed. His phone lit up again, Vanessa Cross, calling non-stop. He let it ring. Every step felt like peeling off a mask. Letting go of something heavy. Something fake. Outside, Marcus Hale caught up to him, out of breath. "Julian. You can't just walk out like this," he said, stunned. Julian turned, calm but sure. "I can't stand at that altar knowing what I know," he said simply. "I can't lie to myself anymore." Marcus stared at him. Then something shifted, he saw it. The clarity in Julian's eyes. The peace that hadn't been there before. Julian looked back at the grand entrance just once. Then walked away, without regret. Maybe for the first time, he was choosing something real. The city felt quieter than usual as he drove through familiar streets, not sure where he was going, only knowing he couldn't go back. Not to the penthouse. Not to the hall where a groom would never arrive. Eventually, he pulled over near a quiet overlook. He stepped out of the car, the cool air brushing his face. And for the first time in years, he simply stood still. No meetings. No headlines. No deadlines. No lies. Elena's words echoed in his mind. I've done fine without you. But now he understood. That fine had come at a cost. A cost she bore alone. The children he never knew. The love he once had and let go. The life he chased and found empty. Julian leaned on the railing, staring out at the horizon. The ache in his chest could no longer be ignored. He had spent so long chasing perfection, thinking it would shield him from the pain. But all it did was bury what mattered most. He caught his reflection in the car window. Older. Tired. But for the first time, honest. He wasn't thinking about Vanessa. Not about applause. Not about business headlines. He was thinking about Elena. About two small children who didn't know their father. About years stolen by pride and silence. The road ahead was unclear. But one thing burned in his chest now: he couldn't pretend anymore. He couldn't live another day running from truth. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Julian understood. He had a choice to make. Not for appearances, but for the life he truly wanted. And this time, he wouldn't walk away from it. Julian followed what looked like the right path. Success, status, the perfect image. But it led him to emotional emptiness and the near loss of everything real. Sometimes, the path that looks perfect is the one pulling us further from purpose. Direct hit moral of the story. Chasing perfection without truth leads only to emptiness. Real wealth isn't measured in appearances or applause. It's in love, honesty, and the courage to face the past. Sometimes, walking away from expectations is the first step to reclaiming what truly matters. Clapperboard, that's the end of the story. What did you learn from this? Drop your thoughts in the comments section. Leave a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you never miss our next upload. And don't forget, share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Thank you so much for watching.